So today's the session on history of Amritsar will be from the point of view of an architect and an urban designer and a resident of the city, and I'm all three of them. We will unearth the history of Amritsar by studying the layers of the physical form of Amritsar. We will gradually unlayer, delayer the history of Amritsar, starting from the 16th century when it was founded, right up to today, the present times. So, without much ado, I would start on this venture or adventure, as you might put it, because you will have to excuse me. I will need to juggle between the screen, the laptop, because I have to coordinate these both instruments, tools here, and I'm all wired up for the first time. So if there's any glitch, please correct me so that I can correct myself. As I said, the layers of history are very important to understand history of a city, the layers of the form of the city. It's like an archaeology exercise. When you see how city evolved, you'll be able to relate to what happened in the last 4 centuries or 5 centuries through which city, charted its course. So we can divide the city's evolution into categorically these 5 stages. We'll call it the Guru period, when it was founded, and up to 18th century, when Guru Gobind Singh was there till that time. Then we shift to the Misl period, which comes after the Guru period. The Misl period is the period in which Punjab was divided into many sovereign states, 12 to be exact. 12 misls were there, which were being ruled by different leaders of their clans. And then we shift to the period in which the consolidation of not only of empire of all these misls took place by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, but also of the city of Amritsar. Then we come to the fourth stage, which is the British period, which is, from where we start seeing the disruptions in that incremental and gradual evolution of the city. Then, obviously, after that post-independence period, so I would like to show you each stage. I'll give you a glimpse of the evolution of the city from where it started. Can you see, the reference point is that line that you see around the central part is the walled city line. So you can see how from a small seed in that womb of the walled city, it is growing. The first 3 slides are of the Guru period. You'll see the larger version of them, how it is increasing in its size. So starting from that small seed around the Golden Temple, the first settlement, then it expands, then it further comes to an expansion in Misl period. Then you see it growing and finally becoming a walled city during Maharaja Ranjit Singh's period in the 5th slide. Then below that, you see what happens when the Britishers take over Amritsar. And then further at the independence time and then post-independence expanse of the city. So you can see the first slide and the last slide and see how it has grown from that small settlement into this large city which you're visiting today. So we'll start with the Guru period, which starts somewhere when it was envisioned and somewhere in 1565 to 1730. We'll see how the city grew. Most of you would know, who are from here, that it was Guru Ram Das Ji, the 4th Guru, who founded the city of Amritsar. But to tell you that this vision was basically given by 3rd Guru, Guru Amar Das Ji, to Guru Ram Das Ji, because he was aware of the we had a sarovar here before the temple came, before Harmandir Sahib came up. There was a sarovar which was supposed to have medicinal, the water of that sarovar was supposed to have medicinal qualities. And you can, just a moment. There's a little lagging behind my laptop. So this was a sarovar, and this sarovar was supposed to be having the qualities, medicinal qualities of water, which could cure people. Or I will read Guru Ramdas ji what he wrote about this place. Amritsar Satgur Satvadi Jit Nate Kauva Hans Hohe. Now it is symbolic. I don't know whether physically it happened or not, but what it means exactly is the true Guru, the speaker of truth, is the pool of ambrosial nectar. Bathing within it, the crow becomes a swan. That is what it means. And you can see, I'm sorry, there is a little coordination problem. So you could see the crows taking the dip in the pool of nectar and then coming out as swans. It shows something else here and something else there. I'm sorry. Can you go back? Who's controlling the slides? If you could go back. Yes. Yes. Now we can move on to the next slide. So this is where you can see the foundation of the, so that vision that you saw, that it was envisioned that this sacred space should be qualified by embodiment of a built structure. In terms of a built structure, this vision was of Guru Ramdas, which was realized then and made possible by fifth Guru, Guru Arjan Dev Ji. So this coming up of Harmandir Sahib was to qualify the already existing sacred space which had that sarovar. And then Guru Arjan Dev Ji took that idea forward, fifth Guru, and this is the slide which shows the laying of the foundation of Harmandir Sahib. I'm intentionally not calling it Golden Temple because Harmandir Sahib is the word for this shrine. It is a touristy kind of vision of calling it Golden Temple. So here you see the foundation stone being laid by none other than the Sufi saint Sai Mian Mir. So I think it must be one of the rare examples in the history of founding a city where the holy city of Sikhs is being founded, the foundation is being laid of the center of the city, but is being laid by a Muslim Sufi saint. So that vision which Guru Nanak Dev Ji gave, na ko Hindu, na Musliman, so humanity prevails over all formal and ritualistic forms of religion. That was the point that was being made here. Sorry. So, yes. So here you can see another thing that I want to emphasize here is that in Amritsar, it was a city which became before the Golden Temple. Fourth Guru, before Harmandir Sahib was built, it was the fourth Guru who brought the concept of Batti Hattan, we call it. There were 32 shops that were made here to give to start a settlement process. See, most of the gurus, from if you study Sikh history, the way Guru Ramdas Ji founded the city of Amritsar, there were other cities like Goindwal, which was founded by the third Guru. There was a city of Anandpur Sahib, which obviously ninth Guru and 10th Guru also founded those cities. So there is always this tradition of building new cities by different gurus. And so this concept of starting a settlement came before the shrine. And simultaneously, the shrine also started coming up. So the city and shrine share a very intense relationship here. They're very dynamically and intrinsically attached to each other. And they grew together, the city also and the shrine also. So we'll see that journey in the next few slides, that how they went from one stage to another stage. So once that structure was made of Harmandir Sahib to qualify the sacredness of this space, which was envisioned by third Guru, Guru Amar Das Ji, finally, during Guru Arjan Dev, the fifth Guru's time, that structure was further qualified and given meaning by placing Guru Granth Sahib inside that structure, and that's when it became Sanctum Sanctorum. Before I, can you go a slide behind? One slide behind, please. Back. Okay. So next slide. So one slide is missing. In any case, I will tell you here. So after this fifth Guru created the Harmandir Sahib, the Sanctum Sanctorum, then comes a stage when sixth Guru comes into picture, and that is the time when he adds another structure, which is axially connected to Harmandir Sahib, and you can see the yellow part is Harmandir Sahib, and to the right, where that causeway leads to, comes up Akal Takht. So this was constructed by sixth Guru, Guru Hargobind Singh Ji, to introduce the concept of Miri along with Piri. So till fifth Guru, the pursuit of spiritual goals was the main idea behind Sikhism. But the kind of politics that prevailed at that time, because the fifth Guru was martyred by Jahangir at that point of time. So you see a shift here in the philosophy of Sikhism, where a temporal seat, where a symbol of sovereignty is added to the spiritual symbol of Harmandir Sahib. So this is what we call the concept of Miri Piri in Sikhism, where the concept of pursuit of justice and freedom, along with the pursuit of spiritual goals, they were combined, these both concepts. So this is how the shrine grew at the time of sixth Guru. Next, please. So this is about, we'll stop at the shrine and then we'll move on to the city. But you can see here the another point that I wanted to make, that you can see most of the elements that were used to create the architecture of Harmandir Sahib are basically a combination of Indo-Islamic architectural elements. As it happens that any new style, any new structure that comes up, it borrows something from the precedent styles. But at the same time, you would also notice that though those Indo-Islamic elements have been used, but the overall composition is very distinct in its identity from a temple or mosque. It has its own vocabulary, it has its own expression. So this is what the architecture of Sanctum Sanctorum. Next, please. This is another structure that came along with. Another structure which I have not shown here was Santokh Sar, which came almost simultaneously with Harmandir Sahib. So these were the two Gurdwaras which came up. And this also at the time of, after sixth Guru, Baba Atal was also constructed there. And this Sarovar is called Kaulsar, which is named after Mata Kaula. We will not go into the detail of that. Next slide, please. Okay, next. So this completes the Guru period. So now you can see that how from that seed of Golden Temple and those settlements of Batti Hata, some residential quarters also came up around Golden Temple, and Golden Temple always remained the geographical and spiritual center around which everything else was happening. Whether it was market, whether it was residences, so everything came up around that. Next. Now we will move on to the Missal period. So after Guru period, let me just give you a historical perspective here. After Guru period, after Guru Granth Sahib, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, uh, we had a period in between which was dominated by Guru ka Sikh called Banda Singh Bahadur, who was a disciple of Guru Gobind Singh, and he carried forward the mantle of, that concept of sovereignty, which was Miri Piri, that became part of Sikh philosophy, and he fought against Mughals. But after that, after Banda Bahadur was also taken, captured, and was put to death, after that, for quite some time, the politics of Punjab, Punjab was in turmoil for a very long time. So there is something which we call Chota Kalukara and Vada Kalukara. So two big Galugara and Chota Galugara. So these were two confrontations between the Mughals and the Sikhs and the invaders who were coming from outside, like Ahmad Shah Abdali. So this was a period which was a period of turmoil. So during this period, still going by the principle of sovereignty, a lot of Sikh leaders emerged in Punjab, and they all had their own states, independent states, which were called missals. So that's the period which we call missals. So notably few missals that I can talk about are Ramgarhia missile, then there was Ahluwalia, Jassa Singh Ahluwalia missile thi, Shukar Chakia, from where Maharaj Ranjit Singh comes. So many missiles like this with different names and with their different leaders. So as I was talking about the period of turmoil and invasions, twice or thrice, or even more than that, I think, number of times, Harmandir Sahib was desecrated by Ahmad Shah Abdali. But the resilience of this place, because he believed every time Ahmad Shah Abdali would come to India, and on the way back, because he had already conquered Marathas and he had, diminished the Mughal influence, but every time when he'll go back with all that loot, which also included the women folk, which they would take for their harem back home, the Sikhs on the way would, attack them and recover most of the loot that they have done, and also especially the women folk which they were taking along. So that was a period, and Ahmad Shah Abdali presumed, and he was told that all this power or strength which Sikh community draws, all that valor or bravery, it comes from this pool of nectar. So he decided to fill it up and desecrate Harmandir Sahib so that their source of strength can be wiped out, and then he can, conquer all these people. So this is a slide on the left that you see is a slide in which 36, led by Gurbaksh Singh, defended Harmandir Sahib against 30,000 people, 30,000 soldiers of Ahmad Shah Abdali's Fauj. And also on the right side, you see that at many points in history, Harmandir Sahib was taken over by elements, by Mughal rulers were given the captivity of that. So there was a person called Masarangad who took over and converted into where he would have his Nach girls perform in the Sanctum Sanctorum. But then in the slide, you can see two Sikhs on the right side who have जिन्होंने अपना घोड़ा वो पीछे दरख्त के साथ बांधा हुआ है, so they come and they again, you know, at many points of times they killed Masarangar and restored the sanctity of Harmandir Sahib. So this desecration, rehabilitation went going on. Then the Missals decided that in order to defend Harmandir Sahib, what they did was they created their bungas all around Harmandir Sahib shrine, the main shrine. So they had their own residential quarters. All different Missals had their own residential quarters around Golden Temple. And apart from that, next slide, please. Same thing happened next. The same thing happened to the city also. Now, that red part you see in the center is Harmandir Sahib. And each missile, if you can see, there is a Ramgarhia missile area, there's Ahluwalia missile area, there's the missile Pangia, they have their own area. So all the missiles, they had their own residential quarters, the noblemen, the sardars, the leaders of the missile around Harmandir Sahib. And the city also expanded because they had their own quarters also, where their missile people would come and stay. So it was like a guild, as you see in a medieval city, all the burg cities of Germany. So we call them here Katara. So all these areas belonging to different missals were then called Katra Ahluwalia, Katra Pangia. So all these became Katras, the residential quarters of all the missals. And mostly these guilds will be walled. They will have their own entry, their own gate. But you see, Amritsar at that point of time had the status of, it was like a Vatican-like status, you know, where no one had their decree. So all the leaders of the missals have their own missals to rule. But here when they would come, here what would reign supreme is Akal Takht, Akal Bugga. So they will have to come here. This was where all the conflicts would be resolved, where they will come together, even if they had their own differences. Here they would all bow before the Sanctum Sanctorum and Akal Takht and accept the decree of Akal Takht. So you can see the next slide also. This is also which shows how all the missals which had different areas. And also you can see on the left side a big fort-like structure which is colored in red. So it is the Logar Fort, which was built on the outskirts, again with the intention of defending the city of Amritsar of whatever scale it was at that point of time. Next. So after this period comes the era of the last emperor of India, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who consolidated his empire at one point of time, just short of Delhi, right up to Kabul. And he was also responsible for consolidating the city of Amritsar and giving it a very concrete form by building a wall around Amritsar. Next. So here you see, this is showing on left side you see the Lahore, the city of Lahore, and on the right side you see the city of Amritsar. And you can see that red line in between, which is now the border between the two cities. And Lahore was obviously the city which he made as a capital for his empire, Maharaja Ranjit Singh. But that was a political capital. At the same time, Maharaja Ranjit Singh paid equal attention, rather more attention, to Amritsar, and he developed it as a spiritual and cultural capital. So here you can see in this picture that Maharaja Ranjit Singh is, on left side is his bunga, his residential quarters, which were called Sarkar Bunga, because Maharaja Ranjit Singh was addressed as Sarkar. And you can see here him overlooking from the terrace of Bunga Sarkar, the view of Harmandir Sahib. Now, I would like to just one fact that I would like to bring to your notice here is that before Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Harmandir Sahib was a brick structure. So the other day, people who attended my poetry session, I explained to you about Nanak Shahi brick. So it was a brick structure done in lime mortar, a very simple state structure. So it was Maharaja Ranjit Singh who introduced, who cladded this structure with marble on the lower stories and gold on the upper story. So what you see today of what, that's why it came to be known as Golden Temple after Maharaja Ranjit Singh used gold plating on the domes of this and upper story of this shrine, Gurdwara. So that was a time when the present form of Harmandir Sahib, what you see today, emerged. But here, what I would like to point out is, just stay here, just see how intrinsic, you can go to the next slide, stay here, how intrinsic, organic, integrated relationship Harmandir Sahib shares with the city. The city is right at the boundary of the pool of the nectar. So what you see today, a very well-defined square parikrama, you don't see it here. The city was interacting with the shrine. There's an immediacy. There's that informal, relationship between the city and shrine, which you don't see now. It is a very formally ordered, closed space from the city. So I would like you to register this image in your mind. That is how, at that point of time, Harmandir Sahib had this kind of form and its surroundings. Next slide, please. So here again, you see that vision. You can see Bunga, Sarkar Bunga in the background. On the right side, you see a part of Harmandir Sahib, and on left side, you see Akal Takht. और आप ये देखेंगे कि अकाल तख्त थोड़ा सा सी I don't know whether it was intentionally done or it happened on its own. On the axis of Harmandir Sahib, Akal Bunga, Akal Takht is slightly tilted. It doesn't exactly face Harmandir Sahib. So conveying that thou Akal Takht in height is a bigger structure than the spiritual shrine, but then it doesn't directly face the shrine. It is a little tilted from there. So, that's an observation which I wanted to share with you. Next slide, please. And it was Maharaja Ranjit Singh, as I said, who brought artwork to Harmandir Sahib. Apart from marble cladding, doing parikrama, apart from gold plating, he got artisans from various parts of Punjab. So people came from Chaniot, which is in Pakistan now, to do some work. Some artists came from Pahadi kingdoms, which he had consolidated, taken over. So you see beautiful stucco work here. We call it Gach and Tukri work in our language. So you see beautiful stucco work, you see kalamkari, you see inlay work. Next slide, please, in which you can see inlay work. You would have all seen it when you visited Harmandir Sahib. It still stays there. The inscriptions, the calligraphy. Next slide, please. This is that inlay work that you see. Next. So he really embellished, nurtured, and he still called himself as a slave to Das. मैं दास हाँ कि जो ये सब कुछ कर रहे. He never behaved like a king when he came to Harmandir Sahib. So much so there's a, I don't know, myth or story or whatever it is. He was once punished by Jathedar of Akal Takht on certain distraction or deviation that he had done from his moral conduct, and he accepted that punishment. Next, please. So now here you can see what it was at that point of time. You can see now a very boldly drawn wall around the city. It was an 18 feet thick wall. It is not the wall that you see today, because later on Britishers, they broke down this wall and they created their own wall, which is now not as thick as it was, because at that time the objective was to fortify the city against any future attacks. So this is a view of the city with a wall all around, and you still see Logar Killa. Next, please. So here you see he added now two more structures on the outskirts of Amritsar. See, again, his humility. On the red structure that you see is Killa Gobindgarh, which is outside the wall, so that any attack from Lahore side, if any invader comes, they would be able to defend the walled city. So you have a fort outside it. And on the upper side, you see a green square. This is the Rambagh Palace. So he made his palace outside the walled city. He didn't make it within the walled city, the city which was founded by Guru Ramdas Ji. He chose to build it outside the city. And following his example, it is basically a typical Charbagh garden. He was inspired by Shalimar Garden of Lahore, and he recreated it here. And then he had his own summer palace at the center, and then there were four axial buildings. There were baradaris, there were chhatris, which you can see here. But here I would like to show you, maybe in the next slide, I would bring that. You can see on the right side is what we show the road network of the city, the structure and major structures that were there. And a lot of greens you can see here. And following his example, a lot of other noblemen, they also made gardens outside the walled city. So at that point of time, just imagine a city which is contained within the walls, and outskirts are all gardens. So you can see certain views next. Just stay here. But on the right side, if you see how intricate the pattern of the city is, what you see in black is the built form. What you see in the white is the roads and pathways. Next slide, please. So see, now this is the view of Gobindgarh Fort in the upper slide. And you see another view of outskirts of Amritsar below with a garden, water body all around it. Imagine, I mean, you're visiting Amritsar now, and we know that despite all this holiness, we have certain pockets which we are not really very proud of. But this is how the city looked at the time of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Well-maintained green out spaces outside the walled city, and a thriving and throbbing cultural hub within the walled city. Next, please. So here is that concept of Charbagh, which he created for himself, that you can see in that orange slide. A few buildings that he made there. Right side, you see the Deori, the entrance, which was connected to Harmandir Sahib with a route, with a ceremonial route. And then you see the summer palace. Below, you see a watch tower on four corners of Rambagh. It is now called Company Bagh. When Britishers came, they took over and they renamed it as Company Bagh. So again, you see here, sometimes an architecture tells you about the personality of a ruler, of a king. How simple buildings he created. I mean, the building that you see in the bottom corner, right corner, is his palace. But it just looked like any residential quarters. There's nothing special to it. So it speaks volumes about what he achieved and how he lived. Next. So that's till the time when Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time, where the consolidation of Amritsar city happened in a very incremental way. There were no disruptions. The city grew around the central part, Golden Temple, which was again the center of gravity, spiritually as well as geographically. But now come the invaders, and things start changing. So I call it colonial disruption when Britishers came. Next slide, please. Next slide. So what they did, and they did it in many cities, Britishers. So this is basically a military strategy that they followed to make a political statement. And it's the politics of planning, what we call it. What they would do is, what you see, I've written natives. below, which is the walled city. So what they would do is they will put a railway line cutting their settlement from the natives. And they will call their settlements civil lines. People, civilized people who stay there, as if on the other side of the railway tracks are uncivil people. So, what they wanted to achieve here after 1857's mutiny was to have one control point between the old city and the new settlement where they would stay, Lawrence Road, Mall Road, Queens Road. So there's one bridge, overhead bridge, which would connect the walled city with the new settlement because the railway line is cutting the two entities so that they can control that point at any point of time if there's a mutiny by uncivil natives. Next slide, please. So now here you see what happened during. Suddenly, you can see Harmandir Sahib stops being the center of the city. There's a lopsided development now. Had that disruption of railway line not taken place and now upwards, north upwards, they are making their city, the centrality of Harmandir Sahib, which was creating that zone of influence on all the city, is gone now. So they don't care much about it. And you see that cantonment on the left side. I mean, these were the cantonment, canal colonies, and these were the two major areas which they would develop whenever they would go. And the whole development becomes lopsided, and you see this lopsidedness till today. All the avenues, I'm sure most of us who are sitting here, residents of the city, come from the north side. So the moment the south side was relegated to the natives, वो आज भी वो जो class difference है, that politics still sustains today. So once you make a decision, political, we never tried to undo it when we became independent. Till today, the south of cities has contractors, has Namak Court, all the courts are there, Sultan Wind area. So these are the areas where the lower economic group stays. And all the avenues are on the north side where all the elite and this division continues. So there's always not only the partition that we talk about, there's partition within our cities, which Britishers did. They were expert at dividing, not only countries, but cities also. Next. This is a survey plan during that area only, Britishers. Next. Now, this is a very interesting slide. So this is what happened to the shrine. What they did to the city was one disruption that you saw. Now, wherever they went, they would always create their symbols of hegemony and power. What you see is a clock tower being constructed, which is higher than a Akal Takht, which is higher than the Sanctum Sanctorum, Harmandir Sahib, to make a political statement that we have arrived. The power shift has taken place. Later on, this clock tower was demolished, brought down, and then new Ghantaghar Chowk, jab aap jaate hain, when you enter the city. So it's now built by the natives. Next slide, please. So this is what they did. As I said, they made a clock tower, they made town hall, they made all these power symbols of power, which they wanted to showcase. But at the same time, they didn't interfere with the traditional fabric of the city. They created their own 3 or 4 or 5 structures, railway station, GPO, which were outside the walled city, and this town hall and some other buildings to make a statement. But they never still, the sensibility of preserving the heritage was there. Next slide, please. At the same time, when this was happening, I would like you to see this slide. I don't know how many of you have gone and seen Khalsa College. There's a slide of Khalsa College. So when they were doing their typical Victorian architecture, there was one person called Pai Ram Singh who made a lot of buildings in Lahore. And this is one gem of architectural expression that he created in Amritsar. Now, here you can see that there is a shift from that pure Victorian to what we call Indo-Saracenic architecture, in which he brought a lot of elements like chhatris, and the arches are now cusped arches. They are not the arches which are round arches or pointed arches. So the typical cusped arch which we have, which is again an Islamic element, but then he introduced and changed that expression again to create a new identity in which the Indianness also, for its the indigenous expression was highlighted. Next slide, please. So this is what city looked like at that point of time. Uh, can you see the semblance in the street picture? I mean, it is not, the whole street has a certain harmony, which you can see. It is not what you see today, one glass steel building, one another traditional building, and then another building which is in brick, another building in concrete. You have a semblance of the streetscape here. Next slide, please. This is Katra Ahluwalia. You again see that how the heritage has been preserved and not touched. Next slide. So what I want to highlight here is that till this stage, despite the colonial disruptions, the relationship of Harmandir Sahib, the shrine, with the city is very unique in the way that what you see is a gamut of intricately woven, meandering built form and streets which have no pattern. There's no geometry there. They're all organic. But when you come through all these meandering streets to the center, you suddenly confront a formally ordered, geometric, cosmic experience. So this contrast from where you come and where you arrive, that sense of arrival, this contrast between the two entities used to heighten that experience of having arrived. And it will always add to the awe. Some people use that word, vismad, morning mein, Patar Sahib ne use kiya tha. That sense of having arrived through all that profanity of mundane world and confronting and coming across the spiritual order was something which now I don't know how much you feel, because at that point of time, the city was right at the border of the shrine. And the experience would be sudden. That surprise element would really, that shock element would create that awe. Gradually, which has been lost. I'm speaking as in, now maybe you see very beautiful heritage street, a Galyara all around it, we'll come to that. But that relationship between the shrine and city is gone forever. That dynamic, intrinsic immediacy, that informality is gone. And I think Sikhism always talked about that philosophy. I thought it'll be a 20-minute presentation, but I got carried away, I think. Next. So at the same time, this literary renaissance was happening. We have these people, apart from the British influence, वो जब होता है बाहर से तो ज़्यादा resistance में you see people who want to assert their identity. What you see here is Gurbaksh Singh Preet Ladi, Nanak Singh, novelist, Pai Veer Singh, Taniram Chatrik, Professor Mohan Singh, Faz and Manto. You'll be surprised to see Faz and Manto. All these people are from Amritsar. And you will be surprised to know that Faz and Manto they started their career from Amritsar. Next slide, please. These are the institutions which were founded at that point of time. You see Preet Nagar. I wanted to talk more about it some other time. I think it requires completely different presentation. Pai Veer Singh Residence is there, which is now a residency in a way. It has library, and you have art gallery. These three institutions came up during that time. Next. This, I've already spoken about it. Jallianwala Bagh, what happened in Amritsar. So I think it is said that massacre in Amritsar set the stage for freedom of India, but it suffered. The community suffered there. Next. So this is where, again, one example I'm going. I don't know how many of you seen Durgana Temple. It is almost a replica of Golden Temple, but earlier this shrine was common to all the communities. Suddenly, this division, this this diversion starts coming up. They create another shrine, which is again a beautiful shrine, but then you can see that divide happening between the communities. Next. Uh, Partition riots. They affected Amritsar badly. Navdeep ji was saying 40% population was comprising of Muslims, and now you find nobody. Next slide, please. This is all the black spots are the spots which were damaged during the partition. What you see, these black spots, there were people living here. So you please relate these black spots to those people who were massacred here after Jallianwala Bagh in partition also. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is the part where I will not next talk much about. This is the present state which you are seeing. Next. This is what happened during Operation Blue Star, another major disruption. So whenever these political disruptions happen, be it Britishers, be it our own people, next slide, please. What happens is the problem is in politics. And can you see that white space around Golden Temple now and how built form has been pushed behind? All this built form, which was the heritage of the city, the most precious heritage, was demolished in one stroke. And then landscaped corridor was created, which is now, you see it as a heritage street or Galyara or whatever you call it. Next slide. This is now, we should preserve the heritage. Some of the remaining elements that you saw still were there. We need to do that. Next. Next. This is what we are trying to do, a bit of my input. We have created that left side district administrative complex on the vocabulary in which Khalsa College has been built. This is a Valmiki Mandir which we have made here, which you may not be, it is said that Valmiki wrote Ramayana here. If you ever get a chance, please visit it. This is now entry gate to the Golden Temple, and what you see on the left again at the bottom is the Heritage Street. So we need to preserve this legacy. Next slide, please. This is where you're sitting, Gobindgarh Fort. This has also been preserved, but for some other time. Rest of the comments. Next. I don't know how many of you would have noticed during your heritage walk, ये जो छज्जे हैं हमारे अमृतसर में, इसमें आप नीचे देख रहे हैं एक हाथ बना हुआ है. Can you see there? There's a hand pointing out. It is nothing, but it defines the boundary of the property. But it's, I think, also pointing, it's a pointed finger to us also to preserve the legacy. Thank you very much. I think I've taken more time. I'm sorry. But I hope the message has reached you. Thank you. I think people, thank you so much. Memory culture is very important, and material culture is basically a vehicle for memory culture. Let's preserve our material culture, because as they say that man without a memory, as people without history, can never grow wiser and better. Thank you very much.